Hi! Today we're going to learn about adding and subtracting vectors. Example 1. Let's say we have a problem like this. Given that vector v is equal to 1 comma square root of 3, and that vector u is equal to 3 comma negative 1, calculate the absolute value of 3 times vector v minus vector u. And so basically here what we want to find is the magnitude of the new vector that is created. So the magnitude of the vector which is created when you have 3 times vector v minus vector u. So let's first start out by finding out what 3 times vector v is. 3 times vector v is equal to 3 multiplied by 1 comma square root of 3. So how do we do that? Well, this is called scalar multiplication. And with vectors, it's pretty simple. You just multiply 3, or the scalar, with each component in the vector. And so we have an x component and a y component, that's what they're called. So you multiply 3 with the x component to get 3, comma 3 with the y component to get 3 square root of 3. And we know vector u will just remain the same as here. And so now we have to figure out what this would be equal to. 3v minus u. So 3v we know is the vector 3. And actually, let's just say that let's just move over and say that we're doing this entire thing. So we have the absolute value of the vector 3v, which is the vector 3 comma 3 square root of 3 minus vector u, which is 3 comma negative 1. Now this is also pretty simple. It's a little bit different than scalar multiplication though. So what we have to do is we have to identify the x and y component in both of these vectors. So here the x component is this, and the x component in this vector is 3 also. The y components are these two. Now what we do is we have to add both the x components, or subtract this x component from this one, and then we have to add both the y components, or subtract this y component from this one. So it's just pretty simple. You have to just add or subtract the respective components. So let's do that with this problem. So this would be equal to the absolute value, let's move over for more space. This would be equal to the absolute value of the x component is 3 minus 3, just the respective components, so 3 minus 3, comma 3 square root of 3 minus negative 1 or plus 1, which is equal to the absolute value of the vector 0 comma square root of 3 plus, or 3 square root of 3 plus 1. And I just happen to know that 3 square root of 3 is equal to 5.2. So we have 5.2 plus 1, which is equal to 6.2, or around 6.2, because this is around 5.2. So now we have this vector here. We can see that this vector is just totally upwards, like this. And this point is the point 0, comma 6.2. Now what are we trying to find here when we have the absolute value of a vector? Well, it's pretty clear. We're just trying to find the magnitude. The reason we know that is because we have the absolute value of the vector. The only thing that remains the same when we have the absolute value of any vector is the magnitude. So basically it's saying that we don't care whether the vector goes out like this, or like that, or like that, or like that. We just want to know, assuming that these are the same magnitude, we just want to know what is the magnitude of the vector. That's why we have the absolute value. It doesn't really care about the direction of the vector. So how do we find the magnitude? Well, let's say that we just have this vector here. It's pretty simple. If we just have this vector here, we have to find this. So this is the x value, the x component, and this is the y component to get to this point. And we use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out what the hypotenuse is, which is the magnitude. But if we have 0 for one of them, then that means that the magnitude is just what the other one is. So we have 0 squared. Magnitude is the square root, so let's just say m for magnitude is equal to the square root of 0 squared plus 6.2 squared. That just becomes the square root of 6.2 squared, which we know is 6.2. And we know that distances have to be positive, so that's why it's not negative 6.2. And the other way we know that is because it's an absolute value. The magnitude is. So the answer to this problem is 6.2 units. Today we learned about adding and subtracting vectors. Example 1. Thank you for watching this video.